Ready to create an amazing story?
Choose a book from one of these real-life writing heroes
to make a new story just like theirs. Charles Dickens used his imagination to write great stories.
Stories that lots of people still love today.
Ooh, let's create a story about Brad's imagination. One day, Brad was laying down on his couch. When suddenly, Brad imagined it was a castle. And Brad imagined he was in a baseball game. Then Brad imagined he saw popcorn.
Whoa, now that's using your imagination.
And Brad imagined he was holding a banana.
Whew, my imagination is exhausting.
So Brad imagined he was relaxing in the circus.
Ooh! Now there's a story I loved.
The end.
Thanks for telling such a silly story about my imagination.
Using your imagination makes everything more fun.
Just like Charles Dickens.
Nellie Bly wrote about some big, and sometimes scary, adventures she went on.
Nellie was bold. That means she was brave and willing to try new things.
Hey, let's create a story about Yadina being bold. At the playground, Yadina was too scared to try the monkey bars, so she went on. The slide. When suddenly, Dr. Zoom was carried away by a balloon.
Hang on, Dr. Zoom!
Yadina had to be bold and chase after Dr. Zoom using her roller skates. Then Dr. Zoom landed on top of a pyramid. To save Dr. Zoom, Yadina had to be bold and climb up the monkey bars.
Yadina, I knew you could do it!
To celebrate rescuing Dr. Zoom, she gave her best turtle friend a big snack.
What a turtle-tastic story!
The end.
Thanks for telling such a cool story about me being bold.
When you really want to do something, be bold.
Just like Nellie Bly.
Maya Angelou was a writer and poet who used her words for good.
A poet is someone who puts words together in a super special way called a poem.
Some poems rhyme, which means they have words that end in the same sound, like moon and balloon.
Ooh, let's create a poem that rhymes, all about Dr. Zoom. A rhyming poem about Dr. Zoom. How should we start? Dr. Zoom. A rhyming poem about Dr. Zoom. How should we start? Dr. Zoom is super smart. What's that, Dr. Zoom? These words make you feel good? And you want more? Okay. Also, Dr. Zoom loves tea. Almost as much as having a turtle party.
Wow, didn't see that coming.
Dr. Zoom's brave and tries new things, like eating onion rings. So super brave. Dr. Zoom can spend all afternoon dancing. Dr. Zoom can spend all afternoon dancing with a raccoon. Dr. Zoom's got the moves. Did you know Dr. Zoom's favorite power is... Did you know Dr. Zoom's favorite power is singing in the shower? What a talented super turtle. And when it's time for bed, Dr. Zoom likes to cuddle on. And when it's time for bed, Dr. Zoom likes to cuddle on a slice of bread. Oh, Dr. Zoom. And even though our poem is just about done, Dr. Zoom, you're... And even though our poem is just about done, Dr. Zoom, you're loved a ton.
Group hug?
The end.
Wow, that was a great poem.
Dr. Zoom just loves how we use our words for good.
Just like Maya Angelou. Mary Shelley used her imagination to write stories that were totally different from everybody else's. Some of her stories were spooky.
Ooh, let's create a story about Xavier. Your way. Xavier was walking in the woods when suddenly something happened that was Xavier was walking in the woods when suddenly something happened that was very spooky. He came face to face with a book monster. At first, Xavier tried to be invisible. But then Xavier decided to be brave.
Go, Xavier!
Xavier stood bravely, holding a wand. To Xavier's surprise, the book monster said, "Let's boogie."
Wow, didn't see that coming.
The end.
Thanks for making an amazing story about me.
You're on way.
Just like Mary Shelley.
Zora Neale Hurston wrote all kinds of stories.
And she shared them with people all around the world.
Hey, let's create a sharing story about Brad. Brad was writing his new comic book alone in the classroom. When suddenly Brad saw a lonely moose.
Aw, poor lonely guy.
So, Brad decided to share his comic book about Baby Brad. Reading Brad's comic book together made it so happy.
Sharing makes everything better.
So then they decided to write a new story.
That story was awesome!
The end.
Thanks for telling an awesome sharing story about me.
Stories are best when you share them with others.
Just like Zora Neale Hurston.
The Bronte sisters were creative people who loved to pretend.
Charlotte, Emily, and Anne wrote lots of great stories.
Hey, let's create a story about us pretending. One rainy day, Yadina pretended to be a ringmaster. And Xavier pretended to be a pirate. Yadina and Xavier pretended they were inside a garden. When suddenly, they pretended the floor turned into ice. I'll save them. So then, Brad pretended to rescue his friends as
So then, Brad pretended to rescue his friends as Bike Man.
Yay, Brad, our brave hero!
Xavier and Yadina were proud to have such a brave friend as they climbed aboard Brad's rescue. Xavier and Yadina were proud to have such a brave friend as they climbed aboard Brad's rescue boat.
That was amazing!
The end.
Thanks for telling such a surprising story about us.
And pretending some amazing things. Just like the Bronte sisters.